Welcome to the Valley Politics History Interviews. I'm Terry Christensen. Bob Kieve was a fixture in San Jose politics for 50 years as an engaged citizen and especially as CEO of KLIV News Radio, which focused exclusively on San Jose and the South Bay. He was active with San Jose Rotary and the Chamber of Commerce, and although his politics skewed slightly conservative, he was a gentleman and friend to people of all political persuasions who genuinely cared about this community. In our interview, Bob explains why he was forced to drop KLIV's news format and shift to an automated music format. The demise of KLIV as a news station was a huge loss for residents of the Valley who need to stay informed, and it nearly broke Bob's heart. Bob Kieve passed away in 2020 at the age of 98, never less than fully engaged and enthusiastic about our Valley community. We'll miss him. So Bob, tell us, how long has KLIV Radio been around, and how long have you owned the station?
Well, the second question I can answer by saying that on July 1st, we will be celebrating our 49th birthday.
49th.
Yeah.
1967.
1967.
But the station existed before then.
The station existed before then for maybe 5 or 6 years.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And it became a news radio station? When did you shift to that format?
That's interesting because I just asked Jane McMillan, who was the program director
I remember
for some
Jane,
time.
yeah.
I knew you would. When that date was, and she said she's pretty sure it was about 85.
85. So that's a pretty long run as a
Yeah.
news radio station. But you recently changed it over to country and western music. Why did you have to make the change?
Well, we made the change because we had to reduce expenses. We were not getting enough income, so something had to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And what had to be done was to reduce expenses, and the way of doing that was, unfortunately, to let go the people who were in the newsroom and sail along without that. The country station, which incidentally is a limited country station in that it plays music only in from the 80s and 90s, as distinguished from our other station.
Oh, the good country.
KRTY. Well, I wouldn't say that, but which is current.
Yeah.
And it's automated, chiefly automated.
Whereas news radio takes a lot of staffing.
Oh boy. Yes.
Yeah. So you couldn't make expenses, you couldn't get the advertising you needed to sustain the station?
That's absolutely right. We just couldn't get the advertising we needed.
Where are they going? Where are advertisers going if they're not on the radio?
You might anticipate that the answer to that would be that they're going to the internet.
Yeah.
And to some extent that's true. But generally speaking, for example, last year, 15, was the worst year in our history. It was pretty bad for a lot of other radio stations too.
Not only news radio stations, but radio
That's
in
right,
general?
not only news.
What about audience? Was there an audience for news radio in San
There
Jose?
definitely was, and of course, one of the leading stations in the area is a news station, KCBS.
Yeah.
And until recently, other stations with news in San Francisco were doing rather well. But we just weren't able to get a strong enough niche, namely the local San Jose niche, in order to get a large enough audience to cause advertisers to come for us, because they had other places to go.
Yeah, so you really needed both, a strong audience in San Jose,
Yes.
and advertisers who recognize that and are willing to spend some money.
Yeah.
Is the station going to be completely music now, or are you going to retain any of the elements
We're
of KLIV?
retaining as much as we possibly can.
Yeah.
We're retaining, for example, Carl Guardino's weekly programs, the talks at the Rotary Club every week. And then I do commentaries, and I urge members of the audience, especially elected officials, also to have commentaries, and all of that is on. We're also doing a great deal of sports, which we've been doing before, so that's been retained.
San Jose State University sports,
Absolutely.
Spartan sports.
Yeah. Yes.
I know a lot of people appreciate the commentaries, not just yours, but the opportunity to comment on radio. So I think it's great that you're continuing that. I wonder though, Where are you going to get your local news, other than this program, of course? Where are you going to get your local news now that your radio station's
That's
gone?
such a good question, because I leave my house every morning and I used to turn on KLIV to find out what happened. Now I search.
You search on the internet?
Yeah. Oh, no.
No, you search on the radio.
I search on the radio, going first to KCBS.
Yeah. But they don't do, they don't do as much South Bay stuff as KLIV always did.
Exactly, they do not.
Not just traffic.
No, nobody does really.
But council races, mayor's races, what's really going on in the county, that's going to leave a big hole, I think, in
I'm afraid so,
the opportunities people have to access news. And as we know, the Mercury News is not what it used to be either. So it's not a sufficient source anymore.
No.
It's something.
We're not covering, we as a group of media are not covering San Jose in a way that they should.
Is that something about San Jose? Is it because we're so close to San Francisco?
Yes.
Yeah. So we're a little bit overshadowed?
Yeah. And the San Francisco stations come in here like gangbusters.
Yeah.
And they get pretty good audiences.
Well, let's hope they provide a little more coverage of local politics in the South Bay.
Let's hope.
Now that KLIV is gone. I do want to ask you, you've been around San Jose for a long time, 50 years or so? Watching?
46 years.
Okay, 46 years.
47, yeah.
A little bit more than me.
Well, wait a minute, no, 49.
49.
I just told you that.
All right, yeah 49
as of July
years.
1st.
So you've been watching local politics all that time.
Pretty much, yes.
You're a very political person. How do you think local politics has changed over those 50 years? Have you seen?
Yeah, it changed in one dramatic way, and that is there was a time when labor and, if you will, management, if you will, or at least the Chamber of Commerce, got along very well. And on our compact and on the committee that
Political Action Committee.
Political Action Committee, we had two leaders of separate unions.
Bob Duffy from the Plumbers.
Exactly, and John Neese.
John Neese, Building Trades.
And you know, we hardly ever argued about whether this candidate was too much in favor of labor or that one too much in favor. It wasn't the case until suddenly somebody entered the market. Can I remember her name? Amy
Dean.
Amy Dean. She was brought in, and everything changed. And incidentally, I knew it was going to change at that point because she was a disciple of, I've forgotten his name, but he was a Chicago.
Saul Alinsky.
Good for you, yes, Saul Alinsky. And I was in Rochester, New York, when Saul Alinsky descended on that city in much the same fashion that Amy descended on San Jose. And from that point on, there's been conflict between the two.
Well, you know, it wasn't just Amy. Bob Duffy and John Neese were from some of the more conservative unions.
I understand.
And especially as public employee unions emerged, they have tended to be more liberal unions. So there was a lot of tension within the labor movement.
Yes, and they finally won out.
And Amy's arrival kind of determined where it was going to go.
Or would it be right in saying that because of their the fact that they were beginning to dominate, that they were able to bring Amy in?
Well, yeah, I think so. But you know, the chamber changed over this time too. I think when Pat Dando became CEO of the chamber, and we started one of the changes I've noticed in local politics is how much nastier political campaigns have become. The negative mailings that the chamber and labor both do. You've been on the chamber Political Action Committee for a long time.
Long time.
This negative stuff doesn't seem like your style.
Well, thank you. I really don't. I haven't really had an opportunity to participate in the creation of those ads, but I've got to say something, and that is that the very first time that there was an expression of horror on the part of labor was because Pat Dando, in her fight against, I guess it was Gonzalez. No. It was Cindy.
2006, Cindy Chavez versus Chuck Reed, or Cindy Chavez when she ran for city council in '98.
I wish I could be more specific about this. The one thing I can be specific about is that I remember that one morning I was awakened by a telephone call from a friend of mine who said, "What have you people done?" And I asked her what it was, and she said, well, you'd put out a terrible, terrible, nasty, and really, Terry, it was not at all nasty. It was at that time a list of the votes of Cindy Chavez, whom I love incidentally, but Cindy was the butt of that. And the worst thing that they could do, and apparently it was worse than anybody in the labor movement thought was proper, was to tell us how Cindy had voted. That was all. There was nothing else about it that was bad. I think that was a demonstration of really extraordinary talent on the part of the people who were running labor at that time. They took something that was really mild but negative and built it up as if it had been something terrible, and it just exploded.
There's also been some pretty mean stuff from the chamber, and
oh
in
yes,
fairness, sometimes from labor
I
as well.
argue with that.
On a more
excuse me, could I say, but
Yeah.
more recently.
Yeah.
In other words, not that piece.
Yeah.
And that was the very first one.
Yeah, but that's changed the tenor of local campaigns significantly. Not just the chamber, but the way campaigns are conducted now. Let's shift to a little more positive note. Which of San Jose's several mayors, you've observed them all, which one do you admire most? Who's number one on your list?
Oh, golly, how many enemies am I going to make? Well, I think Tom
McHenry.
Tom McHenry was splendid. He did an awful lot for this city.
Well, that's a good suggestion. We're going to get him on Where Are They Now, the other segment of the show that we do. We're running out of time. I just have to say before we close, thank you for KLIV News for all these years. It's been such an important thing for our community and to building community identity. We're really going to miss it. And I also want to congratulate you. When you had to let all those news reporters go, you gave them a year's salary.
Yeah.
And boy, that was a great way to ease them out and help them on their way to the next stage in their career. So
well,
thank you for both of those
Thank you,
things.
and let me say thank you to you for the part that you've been playing in KLIV. Whenever we wanted a knowledgeable comment about politics, we went to Terry Christensen.
Well, it was always fun talking to your guys. Great crew. Thank you very much, Bob Kieve.
Thank you very much, Terry.
For other interviews with the leaders and activists who shaped the history of San Jose and Santa Clara County, find CreateTV on YouTube and scroll down to the Valley Politics History Interviews.